asked a bunch of game masters the same question. If you could share one tip about running games, only one tip, what would it be? In just a few days, over 600 of you responded, and your answers were enlightening, surprising, and sometimes kinda weird. So after spending a decent amount of time looking over your top tips, here's the full report. Of course, listing over 600 tips in one video would take entirely too long, so here's how we're gonna do it. Among all this advice, I picked out a handful of hidden gems that barely anyone knows, but that honestly blew my mind. Although that will be the second part of this video, because first I want to do something fun. And all those answers, which do you think are the 3 tips that came up most often? I'll give you some time to think about it and keep them in mind. We'll see if you're right. Yes, there will be a quiz. Until then, here's a few that didn't make it to the top 3, but are still worth mentioning. Surprisingly, only 15 people mentioned trying out different game systems. That's 2.4%, which is pretty low. You know what that means, you all. We need to get a whole lot more knowing about My Little Pony the TTRPG. Taking real good care of your brain came next with 3.4%. That involved feeding your brain with taking inspiration everywhere, but also resting your brain with advice like going on a walk with nothing but moody music, following the same principle of your best ideas come in the shower. For me, that's being a weirdo talking to myself in my car. Next, 31 people said to just get started and run the game and get as much practice as possible, which surprised me that it wasn't higher. I guess you guys aren't as anxious as me. Must be nice. Collecting PC backstories and personal goals was only 6.3% of the answers, which personally freaks me out as a drama and character-driven GM. It's okay, I'm okay. I actually got the impression from the other answers that this is maybe something that a lot of people do anyways, even if it wasn't their top tip. And finally, 40 people mentioned being flexible with the rules, although some mentioned the opposite, that you can only be flexible with the rules once you actually know them well enough to make informed rulings. So if any of these was in your top 3, congratulations, you don't pass this class. What I think is really neat is that this top 3 reveals a lot about what's most important to you as GMs, what fears you have. That's what I feed on. So here's what the actual top 3 is in ascending order. In third place, communication. Nearly 1 in 6 of you mentioned the importance of talking to your players both in and out of game, and also the importance of how you talk to your players. If you're already naturally great at communication, awesome, you probably have a much better dating history than I do. But if that's not the case, lucky for us, I received over 100 different tips on how to talk good. And oh boy, they're so varied. Because communication is basically everything we do as GMs. Even before campaign starts, lots of people mentioned having a session 0. But even before that, curating your table and selecting who you play with makes a huge difference. And after session 0, that conversation doesn't end, we keep checking in. I received way too many tips to list them all, but here's the highlights. 1. Asking for feedback or player tastes is great. In theory, but in practice, as pointed out by Lucky Daggerco or some in their responses, not all players will know how to express what they like. They will tell you what they want, sometimes explicitly, but sometimes without words, just through their actions and what they engage with in the game. So learning to ask and listen is a big one, but so is learning to observe what they say with their actions. And even better, give them the vocabulary to express what they like. I made a whole worksheet for that if you want, so I'll link it below. 2. How you communicate with players in-game is also important. As Leestack puts it in their answer, you are the player's eyes and ears and their only source of information. Players don't know what information is important or not, so keep it simple and telegraph it well. If there's a danger, show the signs. If there's a clue they need, give it to them. Don't be subtle. Even if you're not subtle, your players might miss some stuff, so might as well be as subtle as a raging seagull. 3. Your actions communicate just as much as your words. Players tend to mimic your behavior at the table. If you speak in character, they're more likely to do it too. But also, if you don't speak up when something crappy happens, you're teaching that this behavior isn't discouraged at your table. And 4. Being honest about your process. If you need a pause to figure out what to do next, say it. If you had a rough time prepping, you can say it too. If you portray the GM's role as a complicated and elusive arcane, you're guaranteed to be forever GM. Whereas, as pointed out by Peter, if for example combat scenes have been feeling meh, it could be fun to create a combat encounter together with the table. That way you can use it as a case study to figure out what we want from a combat encounter and how to achieve it. Cool, so that was for communication. Now let's see second place. It's called f***ing gel. 130 people, or a whole 21%, or a whole 1 in 5 people are begging us GMs to take it easy. That starts with not comparing ourselves, which I know is hard to do when you've got the whole internet offering 50 shades of imposter syndrome. Wait, am I the villain? And yes, I see the irony in me saying that, But also consider this, I am one of the people giving advice online and I'm asking 600 people for advice, so you can assume everyone giving out advice out there is constantly in the process of figuring it out. Also, I get that you want to make everyone at the table happy, but guess what? You're also one of the people at the table. So treat yourself with the same kindness that you do other players and put in the game things that you're excited about. Like if you have a cool idea that makes you happy, don't wait, put it in the game as soon as possible. If your people pleaser instincts are doing somersaults at the idea of considering your own needs and wants, put it that way. When you're not having fun, others can sense it, so it's your duty as a people pleaser to please yourself too. Can't argue with that logic now, can you? And what if you mess up? Well, you will mess up and that's okay. Don't take it too seriously, we're just rolling pieces of plastic to punch goblins. You're not alone in this. And if you want data, I've got data. 42 people, or 6.8%, chose as their top tip to lean on your players. Delegate things to them, initiative order, pieces of world building, bringing snacks, playing music. Trust them to help you keep your sanity afloat. The answer I got that puts it best is this one by Leo Zen. Treat your game like you're making a home-cooked meal for your players. If you carry that vibe, it's easy to get past mistakes and remind you that it doesn't have to be perfect. Everyone loves free food, so it's already a success when you start. Nobody's gonna be mean about your homemade cookies, even if they're a little crooked. And now, fairies and gentle fays, the moment you've been waiting for. The top one, drumroll, please. What do you mean your top tip isn't subscribing to this channel? With an impressive count of just over 23%. The takeaway was that the prep that you write alone in your indecently long Google Docs file doesn't matter nearly as much as the real story, which is the one that we tell together at the table. So might as well ditch your prep and the $2 a month you're sinking into a Google Drive subscription. Do you know what you could get with $2 a month? Not a lot, but the point stands. So many of your answers directly named prepping less, or at least prepping smart. Either to leave yourself room to improvise or simply to save yourself time, because once the game starts, your players are gonna pour some gasoline over a good chunk of your prep and light a match anyway. If I'm honest, when I first started, I didn't want to hear that advice. While I knew I could improvise just fine, prepping just made me a lot less anxious going into a game, and therefore more chill to improvise. How do I even learn to be comfortable with prepping less, like concretely? How do I know how much is enough? Well, let's ask those 143 people who have it figured out. Here's the highlights. 1. My favorite by Captain Hank. If you struggle to improvise during sessions, think of yourself as two people. The one prepping the session and the one running it. Prepping just enough that future you will have no choice but to figure out the rest. And depending on your flavor of anxiety, you can either read this one as trust your future self or as set a trap for yourself, which is terrifying but really efficient. Because the best way to make sure you'll learn how to swim is when you're pushed into the water. That's also how you drown, but no matter. 2. This one from Galactic Nexus and Eric S. says at the end of a session, if you ask your players what are you doing next, it gives you a lot more direction on what will be useful to prep. 3. As for how to get you more comfortable with the question of what if something happens and I can't come up with anything on the spot, several of you suggested delegating that to your players. When you're unsure what to do, ask the players a question. It can be buying some time by asking what's on their character's mind in that moment, or even fully making them do your work by asking them what do you think happens next. And 4. Prepping less should be very intentional, not just shooting yourself in the foot without thinking because someone said you should prep less. Pamplemousse says prep exists to make you comfortable and confident in running your game. How much or how little is going to look different for everyone. If you really want to try prepping less, figure out what things you're proficient with improvising and which ones you're not. That's what prepping smart means. For example, Brandon Sparks says, I can create monsters and run combat off top of my head, but making combat interesting takes a bit of homework. Smart prep. And while we're here, let's take it a bit further and play devil's advocate, because I did get a few answers kind of against this prep less advice, or at least saying that there's more nuance to it. Like, what if as a game master, part of your fun is in the prep? In world building, creating encounters, and making up 7 pantheons worth of gods? What if beyond the time that we spend at the table playing, you also get to consider your prep time as a fun hobby in and of itself? And I think that's valid because I'm one of those people. But also there's one subtlety. Over prepping in itself isn't inherently an issue. Sure, you could be saving time, but that's not where the real stakes are, especially if you enjoy prepping. The real issue is when that prep becomes so rigid that you lock yourself in, instead of letting the story unfold cooperatively at the table. Basically, prepping an indecent amount is okay, as long as you don't treat it like a script that the game has to follow. I actually have a name for this whole concept, the GM Schrodinger's box, based on something my first GM once told me. He says running a game is like handing your players a box for them to open. What they don't know is that as they're opening it, you're stuffing the box from the bottom. It means nothing is real until it hits the table. It's all subject to change, so none of your prep is set in stone. It means if what comes up at the table is more fun than your prep, then use that instead. Don't let your prep stop you from discovering the story together at the table. And that was our top 3. I'd be really interested to hear how many people got that top 3 right, because I certainly didn't. Now, before we get into the hidden gems from the answers I received, I've got another little jewel. I think prepping smart also goes into the tools that you use to streamline your prep and ensure that what you do prep actually enhances the game. So here's a French one I've been kind of obsessed with, where you can make an account entirely for free and that has no business being this well made. Because this is a passion project by a solo indie dev who might be a bit of a fellow people pleaser. And it's gonna be the hardest sponsorship I ever do because there's so much I want to say about it, but I'ma do my best. Harpy is a campaign manager and VTT, and it does all the things that you would want from a VTT, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. I want to focus on the attention to detail. Because this project is built for the community by the community, the dev takes direct feedback from GMs who can request and vote on upcoming features purely based on dopamine. You can add music, maps, even animated maps, directly import your Hero Forge mini, or even use some really cool paper minis. Token, paper, token, paper. And add to your map a bunch of 3D assets from a huge library. Kinda reminds me of playing The Sims 3. With 16 languages, it's all flexible and ADHD friendly and customizable, down to picking the color of the interface, and creating your own digital dice with glitter or dragon scales. And you can use it for any system. Even for the most niche TTRPG, you could just drop the image of an empty character sheet and directly edit it. And there's a few upcoming updates I'm really excited about. Like soon you're gonna be able to get stuff that other people make and share the stuff that you make, which no matter what you make in Harpy fully belongs to you. You can export your worlds, use them outside the platform, share or even sell them. You'll always own 100% of what you create. And to make all that happen for free, Harpy is entirely powered not by any ads, but by donations and like one $10 premium tier, but like the vast majority of the features are free. To give you an idea, this is literally a thing the dev said. 3D dice brings so much happiness to people, I can't add a paywall to that. So if you decide to support the project, it will be because it's genuinely wholesome, not because it locks you out otherwise. I've already converted 2 of my campaigns to it, so maybe you should give it a try and vote on future updates so you can shape the future of that platform. And I can have even more fun on it. Great, now let's get back to our very scientific research. We get into a part that I'm really excited about, and I hope you will be as well. In those 621 answers, I picked my top 5 hidden gems that aren't as known, but that I found absolutely amazing. In no particular order, because I think they're all amazing. One anonymous responder completely blew my mind by saying consider genre in many of your decisions, but for example in D&D when you set a DC. Usually we used to thinking of it as how difficult do we think this task is to achieve, but perhaps a more interesting question to add in the mix is how likely is it that this task will succeed in the genre we're playing? Suddenly the answer completely changes depending on whether you're running a heist or a horror game or a swashbuckling adventure. For example, the task is swinging from a rope to get from one ledge to another. In a pulpy action-packed game inspired by Indiana Jones, that would probably be a DC 10. But for a gritty, disempowering horror campaign inspired by the Alien movies, maybe it's more of a 16. Which I think another responder, Carl C, summed up really well in one question. What would Hollywood do? And I know I said 5 tips, but if we're talking about making games cinematic, I kinda wanna slide an extra one in there, cause it's really on topic. Tony H suggested don't be afraid to set up a low, mean, high variance game. And I don't know what that means, so I read the example. Crit success on a 20 or 19 and crit fail on a 1 or 2. And that sounds like such an easy way to make over-the-top spectacular moments happen more often in a game. This one is by Amnon de Carcosa, and I've been telling all my friends about it because it's really good. It's such a good idea and I'd never heard of it before, but it solves a concern I've had for a while about the way we play TTRPGs, specifically when it comes to safety tools. Safety tools are great and necessary. However, I've been feeling lately like a lot of the more well-known ones are designed in a way that is not really fun and can break momentum in the game, and therefore doesn't really incentivize people to actually use those safety tools. What if there were options for safety tools that are fun to use and creative and maybe a bit less clinical? The tip I received said use the world as a safety tool. Of course, I immediately started thinking in a casual sense of, yeah, like if a player does rude things, the NPCs are going to respond accordingly. But that's not what the tip said, and their version is so much better. In their setting, they have a specific type of fate that looks like a little girl in a red cloak and feeds on suffering. When the line is crossed at the table, she appears to the party and asks, "Where's my mama?" she's the one to show up and address it in the fiction. So I made my own version of that. His name is Kyle. He's an NPC that all players have access to and can decide to roleplay at any moment. He's a demigod but looks like an insurance inspector. He wears a beige short-sleeved shirt with a little brown tie and a construction hat and always has this clipboard and little angel wings. When a line is crossed in the game, he appears and is like, "Ooh, hold on, if you keep going down that road, I'm gonna have to write you up. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's like half a dozen code violations. We're looking at a pretty big narrative hazard here. I don't think the insurance is gonna stand for it. It's okay, it's fixable. We can get some mitigation going." And mitigation can even mean rewinding time if we need to retcon something, because fuck it, of course he can do that. He's a demigod. And he doesn't just talk to player characters, by the way. He can say that to elements played by the GM, like an NPC or like the concept of the wind. I'm gonna keep workshopping that idea, but I think the concept of in-narrative safety tools is amazing and can really help ensure that no one hesitates to use them, because now it's actually fun. This one is by Brad Ellison, and it says, "When in doubt, have an orc come through the door with an axe in his hand." And I know it sounds weird, but if I interpreted this the way it was intended, this is... I was pretty sure I'd heard a similar phrase before, so I looked into it, and it seems to be adapted from a quote by the detective novel writer Raymond, saying, "When in doubt, have a man come through the door with a gun in his hand," which apparently is pretty well-known storytelling advice. A guy or an orc or an axe or a gun, they're all just examples to mean the same thing. When your players are stuck and the game is stalling, make something happen that demands direct action from the players. For example, you're investigating a crime scene, and your players don't really know what to do with these clues and where to go next. What if one of them spots someone spying through the window, and the moment they're spotted, who starts running, therefore launching your players into a potential chase scene? In TTRPG, that achieves two things. On one hand, it helps revive a pacing that was grinding down to a halt and injects adrenaline right back into the narrative. On the other hand, it's a way to get players unstuck and give them maybe new leads that reveal something new. Like once you catch the guy, you can interrogate him, or search his pockets if you were a bit trigger happy. And then your players can go back to calling the shots and doing stuff. So when your pacing is stalling, just ask yourself, at that moment, what is my equivalent of an orc coming through the door with an axe? Spotlight at the table is biased. Some characters tend to get more screen time than others for a variety of reasons. Maybe their player is more extroverted. Maybe the character is designed in a way that really connects them to the main plot. Maybe they brought me cookies. There could be so many reasons. And while yes, there are players who prefer to just tag along and are a bit uncomfortable with too much spotlights, if that's not the case here and we're aiming for equality, we're gonna need a better system. Xerel mentioned having a rotation system where each session they try to spotlight a different PC, planning a scene or an encounter where at least one of the players will really shine. It doesn't have to be big and it can take many forms. A roleplay moment, or a moment where they get to use their abilities in a cool way. It reminded me of something that one of my friends did, Acrylic Risen on TikTok, who has a spotlight tracker with the names of the PCs lined up on little notes. Whenever a character got a cool moment, he'd take the paper with the character's name and move it to the back of the queue to see right away who hasn't had spotlight in a while and could use a little attention. I've also heard of check marks to track if everyone's had at least one moment in the game, but overall, anything that gives it physical form makes the stuff a lot easier to track. And I think most importantly, these systems don't have to be rigid. You can use them to plan a character moment, sure, but sometimes the player doesn't bite, or sometimes another unplanned moment will happen spontaneously. In that case, you don't refuse that player a second moment, you mark it so you don't waste that perfect opportunity. But maybe going forward, you're going to give a bit more attention to another player. And it was really hard to pick just 5. So I cheated. I ended up making a second video with a few more that I thought were really great and my own thoughts about them. That way we can keep this video short and sweet. Like me. If you want to hear them, the bonus video is on my Patreon. Anyway, let's do this. This one by Grayson, and it is not new to me. Actually, I've done an extensive amount of overthinking about it, but I'm including it in because it's such a huge game changer, and yet I don't hear all that many people talk about it. Grayson says, create characters collaboratively at session 0, which sounds simple, but if you want to have the most emotionally impactful roleplay and crunchy drama at the table between your players, there are 2 options before you. 1, play with literal actors with a lifetime of experience in improv. Sadly, kidnapping is not an option, they run very fast. Your other option is realizing that anyone can actually become an incredible role player in just a couple hours. All you need is a solid method rather than pray and just hope that roleplay happens. The method is intentionally engineering party dynamics between the PCs, creating characters specifically designed with built-in reason reasons to interact with each other, so that roleplay doesn't just feel effortless but inevitable. It can be as simple as just going around the table and asking what kind of dynamic do you imagine between our characters. Mentor and protege kind of thing, venturing rivals, star-crossed lovers, loose cannon versus by the book, big sibling, little sibling, and then figure out together how this relationship is expressed through their actions. Or you could be really extreme about it. Seek roleplay so intense you lose your mind to it, like I did. And you could too. And you don't even have to do the work because I did it for you. With a full 6-step system that I literally just made a video about. And it's one of my favorite things I made this year. So I hope you'll like it. And on this note, have a good evening. And quick note, if you're gonna make a video collecting data, make sure you actually know how to do math first.